welcome back to Thursdays in the Garden. We're inside today because yet again we have a blustery and kind of chilly Thursday out there, but not to worry, I brought some stuff in that we can talk about. So hope you are having a great day, great start to your day, wrapping up the week, going into the weekend, thinking about spending some more time in the garden. So thanks for tuning in. If you're here, give us a shout out, let us know that we're keeping in touch with you. Hopefully you had a chance to look at our garden video that was aired on Tuesday. We talked a little bit about dividing perennials, which is a really great task that you can be doing now in the garden as the perennials are just starting to pop out. So they're still not too big to transplant. That's great for moving them. It's also great for dividing them and making more. So that's pretty much what we talked about on Tuesday. But I want to just keep it real with you guys. So I showed some images of plants that I had divided and propagated, and they looked really cute and perky and like super happy. I just want to make sure that you know that, for instance, I just planted these geraniums. If you can see them, this one's not too bad. It's just you break off a little division, pot it up. You know, see this one here? Look how sad he looks. You know, but he's going to grow out too. He's got a little bit of green growth in here. Right now, focusing on roots. I'm not giving up faith with this little guy here. I'm just going to keep watering him, keep him happy. So don't be scared if this is what your plants look like. You know, maybe if 8 out of 9 of the ones that you transplant, if they make it, that's great. You don't need to get them all. The other thing I wanted to show you that we didn't talk about in the last video is that not everything is so easy to divide as a leucanthemum, Shasta daisy, or echinacea, or things that have fibrous roots. You've got other things like this iris, which has a large tuber rhizome to it, and then you can see the fibrous roots. I've kind of shaken off the soil, but this was growing in a big clump, and if I want to divide this guy up, I'm really just trying to get underneath the rhizome, lift up as many of these fibrous roots, and then when I go to replant it, either in a pot or in the garden, I'm trying to make, you can sort of see how they all splay out in different directions, so you actually want to make sort of a mound of soil that sits right under here, and then you can splay the roots out around it. That's how you would get this guy set up. Now the other thing with iris in particular, you can see how tall this one is. This is like a sail on a ship, so this thing is just going to be trying to rock around all over the place. So even though normally I wouldn't advocate cutting things back when you're transplanting, this one I would actually cut back just so that it's not constantly blowing itself back out of the soil. Other ones that have giant fleshy roots like this, peonies, daylilies also have big fleshy roots, so be on the lookout if that is something that you find. So hopefully you guys are getting up to some fun stuff in the garden, getting outside even if you're not working out there. Remember, shoot in any questions that you have. I did get some throughout the week following the Tuesday video and from last week's video that I'll be touching on. But I just want to share one really exciting thing. I think it's exciting. Again, it's been really windy and this guy blew over, but have you ever seen a kale blossom? Because usually we plant kale in the fall and it's a really nice fall interest plant, but we had such a mild winter. This doesn't usually happen, but I have these beautiful yellow kale blossoms all over 5 farms right now. Super cute. Didn't know if you'd ever seen these, so I thought I would share. I was excited to see these. So, if there aren't any questions yet, then I will go ahead and share with you one of the questions that I received over the week, which was following the Tuesday video. I showed how to divide the Shasta daisies, but somebody followed up with me and asked, said that they have Shasta daisies, they think they look really cute, but then what always happens is that right when they bloom, like half of them flop over. It tends to sort of fall over, so you know, what are they doing wrong? They don't want to put stakes up. I also don't love putting stakes up in the garden for the same reason I don't like putting netting on stuff to protect it from the deer. I think if you can't make the plant look nice where it is, then you should probably get another plant. But in the case of the Shasta daisy, it's not super uncommon for it to flop, particularly if you have very rich soil or if it's getting a little bit less sun than it would like. But what we've taken to doing here at the club, and you can do this with a couple of different plants, is you can actually so leucanthemum here in Baltimore is usually in bloom around the very beginning of July or late June. So right around mid-May or late May, you can, and the stalks, your clump is about might be 2 feet tall, 18 inches tall. You can actually cut it back by 1/3, almost by 1/2, and what that will do is force it to branch out, make fuller, branchier growth, and then it'll flower a little bit later, but it won't ever get to that full height again. It'll be a little bit shorter, a little bit stockier. And the other thing you can do, which is kind of fun, is so when you have a really tall perennial and you have to cut it back in mid-season, sometimes you're left with a big hole. So what I like to do is I'll maybe, instead of shearing the whole plant, I will shear just the front half of the plant and let the back half stay tall. So what happens then is that the back half of the plant starts blooming right in that late June window, and right when those flowers are starting to fade, then that front is catching up, so I can cut the back and the front will start to fill out, and then you won't even see where I've cut back in the back. So that's my suggestion to you if you have floppy Shastas, but it also works for other perennials. Solidago, I have Solidago in every one of my gardens. It's one of my favorite pollinator plants. It's a nice native, and it gets really tall. It doesn't usually flop, but sometimes it just gets a little bit ungainly. So I will do the same thing. I'll actually take head shears and I will shear it back probably in May or June, and just kind of take it down by about a third, and that keeps it nice and shaped.
Marianne Maliki from upstate New York says she's looking to redo her front walkway. We inherited kind of a mess when we moved in. However, in the spring, there are cute daffodils that come up. And if I recall from last year, maybe tulips. Can these be replanted once I decide on a new front plan? Note, if it's snowing here today, note, it is snowing here today, so I also need to know when to go about tackling this project of digging them up.
Great question. Being from upstate New York, obviously I'm very familiar with the combination of snow and daffodils and snow and tulips and snow in pretty much every flowering tree. So I will say that this is a pertinent question for anybody though. Now we're all looking at daffodils, maybe tulips outside. Now here in Baltimore, tulips are not as likely to perennialize as they are in a cooler climate like upstate New York, but certainly daffodils. So actually I brought, somebody else had asked me about moving daffodils, so I'm going to tie these two together. This is now the time when most of these things are blooming. So just to go over like a little aside here on how bulbs grow. So here's the full bulb plant, poor guy. So you've got the blooms, you've got this nice long stalk. You see this white portion is what was underground, and then you have this big fleshy bulb that, and here are the roots. So we are used to planting these in fall. I think most people are familiar with the idea of planting them in the fall, but you can actually dig them up anytime, ideally after they're done flowering and when they're just starting to turn yellow, and that way you still know where the bulb is, but you're not going to affect this year's bloom. So if it's snowing today, your bulbs are probably not finished blooming yet, so you don't have to worry about that. But what you can do is you can dig down. Again, you want to follow the foliage down, and you really need to make sure that you're staying far enough away from your bulbs so that, and I've definitely done this, you think you're digging up the bulb and suddenly you pull it up and you've got, half of the bulb cut off. So be careful and make sure you go wide. You can dig up the whole clump, and then there will normally be, several bulbs in here if you've had them for a few years, and that might be a surprise for you since if you haven't lived there for very long, but seeing what, how long they've been there, you'll have more bulbs in a clump, and you can actually break those apart and you can plant them individually. You can plant them right now, you can dig them up and move them, I'm sorry, not right now. At the time that you dig them, you can immediately move them into a new spot and plant them. You want to make sure that they're still at that same depth, so daffodils usually like to be at a 6 to 8 inch depth. The bigger ones, if it's a smaller type daffodil, it's a little bit shorter. Tulips I think are right around 5 inch depth. If you dig them up, you can plant them again at that same depth. Leave the foliage, it's gonna look terrible, but you just wanna leave it there until it dies back naturally, and then they'll be there ready to go for next year. Alternatively, you can actually let them dry naturally. So again, I'm digging it out. I'm just gonna leave it somewhere like in the garage, somewhere where it can dry, have good air circulation until the foliage dries up. Then you can actually tease out the foliage. You'll be left with a big pile of bulbs that you can hold on into in a cool, dry storage area, maybe in a cardboard box, something that breathes, until the fall, and then you can install it in the fall. So you have those two options for moving daffodils. And I don't think you should be afraid to move daffodils, because sometimes we inherit other people's bad bulb choices. Like, I know when I first started planting bulbs, it was like, oh, I got these 12 bulbs, boop, 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 let's put them all in a row along the sidewalk. That's not usually the most effective way to show bulbs. You'd rather see them in sort of groupings or clusters, so the same way you would do perennials. So it's a good chance to reevaluate how you want to have those laid out. Great question. Thank you. So other tasks that are going on, I think I mentioned last time I was going to be getting some strawberries. I was very excited that my strawberries arrived yesterday. So I opened up my box, I looked inside, and this is what I have, my brand new strawberry plants. Aren't they cute? They look horrible, but actually they're just little bare root strawberries. And you can see you've got the crown here, you've got some little roots here, not a whole lot of green going on, just a weensy bit of green starting. They're pretty dry because they came packaged. So if you ever were going to try something like this, bare root, it's a very inexpensive way. I think I got like 20, 25 plants for $10, which is pretty cheap. But the way that you plant these is you have to open up a hole big enough for all the roots to be sort of splayed out. So in this case, it'd be like a hole like the size of my hand. And then inside that hole, I want the crown to sit still right at the soil level like this with the roots below. But what I'm actually going to do is make, just like I described with the iris, I'm going to make a mound of soil in the hole and then take the strawberry roots and splay them all around. You can do this for any plant that you might buy mail order. I imagine that a lot of us are buying mail order plants. I would not usually buy mail order plants, but I just thought it was kind of the easiest way to go about getting some fresh strawberry stock this year. Don't have to go to the store, don't have to go to the green nursery. So you spread the roots around and then you backfill right on top of that little mound, making sure that it stays on the surface. So that was fun. These are pretty sad looking, but I think not this year, but probably next year we'll have some really nice strawberries. So I'm excited. So if there aren't any more questions.
Kathy, do you want to make the announcement about Earth Day?
Absolutely. Almost forgot. So this coming week on the 22nd, which is next Wednesday, it's Earth Day. So I don't know how you usually like to celebrate Earth Day, but I imagine if you're like me, you've got a lot more people at home than usual and you're trying to come up with stuff to do. So what we've done is we've put together a BCC pollinator garden giveaway for members who are interested, who would like to. On Earth Day, we're creating mini gardens, so it's 5 pollinator-friendly plants, not all native, but they're all super critical, great pollinator plants, and we're giving away instructions, pollinator plants that you can pick up curbside, and the intention is that maybe you could take out a swath of your lawn, which isn't necessarily doing a whole lot for pollinators and wildlife, and convert that into this ready-to-go pollinator garden that will go from June until October. So if that's something you're interested in, we still have a few of those kits left. They are in limited supply. They're available to any active members. And just shoot me an email or respond to this post and we'll be able to hook you up with more information so that you can get planting for Earth Day. A lot of people think about planting trees on Earth Day, but you can make a huge difference just by supplying a little refuge for pollinator insects, beneficial insects in your garden, increasing biodiversity. So I think we'll wrap that up there. Thanks for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you next week on Thursdays in the Garden.